And who's ready for a fight? There's going to be a showdown between two conflicting viewpoints in EMS. Stand by as we're going to bring you the details. So, for those of you who are not familiar, the International Association of Firefighters, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the National Volunteer Fire Council, and the National Fire Prevention Association came together and put out a joint position statement saying that they were opposed to a degree requirement for paramedics. So this is in direct opposition to the joint position statement by the International Association of Flight Paramedics, the National Association of EMS Management, and the National EMS Educators Association. So we have quite some opposition between these two groups. Fortunately, we have the opportunity to bring two of these representatives together for a showdown. And I was picturing something a little bit grander than what we were able to put together. In fact, what I was picturing sort of would resemble this. Unfortunately, that's not what we were able to put together. With technological limitations, the best that I could do for you is give each side some time to present their case and see if they can convince you that their path and their approach is right. We have to excuse the lazy Photoshop. I'm a little bit under the man flu here, so this is not some of my highest quality work. But, so the individuals that we have joining us today are David Becker, who is the past chief of the EMS section of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And he comes recommended from the board over there to speak on the positions of that organization, although he's strictly speaking not representing the organization. And on the other side, we've got Leger Barnes, who's an educator out of Hawaii somewhere, and she's actually one of the original signatories of the pro degree position paper. So we'll bring that to you in just a little bit. And oh my. So, as I mentioned, round one is David Becker. He's going to argue the position statement that's against the degree requirement for paramedic programs. All right, Chief Becker, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
So, can you tell me a little bit about the position paper that the IAFF, IAFC, and other organizations have put out, and their thought and process behind it?
Sure. This position paper from the four organizations really kind of stems from a position paper that the IFC did, and I understand the IFF had also done one. And so there's a fire-based EMS advocates group of those four groups that kind of meets. And so from that is how this position paper got developed. So there are a couple other fire service position papers out there. And I would just say that really with the increased rhetoric that some groups out there that are proposing this associate's degree requirement, there is a really growing concern among the fire service of the impact that this would have on the EMS profession and specifically the fire service. It's not real clear how this requirement is going to enhance the profession since there's not really any direct evidence based on research of any difference between a diploma or certificate trained paramedic and that of an associate's degree paramedic. So, in addition, there's currently a pathway right now for every paramedic student from an accredited program to obtain college credits if they receive a certificate or diploma. And that pathway allows them to pursue higher education when they deem it to be benefit to them, and it's not mandated to them then.
Now, when you're talking about other professions, they seem to have had some success with increasing their educational requirements. Nurses, the respiratory therapists, they've all sort of increased their own educational requirements for their professions, and they have seen some success as far as increased professionalism and increased compensation. Would this not be also the case for paramedics if this is made a requirement?
No, I don't think so. And again, I don't think that there's really any evidence that there's a correlation between other allied health, and certainly I would strongly say that EMS is not nursing. The reimbursement is totally different from hospitals to what ambulance services get for EMS. In a lot of cases, it's the communities and the community support for the fire departments or for the EMS services in the country that are actually providing that service, and it's not the reimbursement that you see in nursing from the federal government or from the insurance companies. So I think it's totally different. And so to make that, it's a speculation at best that you are going to actually increase pay, that you're going to increase benefits or something like that. And I don't really see that as the reason for wanting to do that. Again, there's no currently there's really no difference between, if you put two paramedics side by side, one that's an associate degree, got an associate's degree, someone that got a certificate or a diploma, and they go out on the ambulance together, there's really no difference in the level of training, the medical education that they got. The associate degree person got some gen ed classes on top of their medical training, but they didn't get any extra medical education. They didn't do any extra clinical or field time. And so I don't see that as the pathway to increasing reimbursement. There are certainly, again, there's people have different opinions on how that's going to be impacted. But I don't think that when you look at reimbursement, they're not saying, well, we're going to pay more for an associate's degree paramedic, or we're going to pay more for a bachelor's degree paramedic. The reimbursement from Medicare, the reimbursement from the insurance companies is all the same. It's just based on the level of service, and there is a national standard for what is a paramedic. There's a scope of practice. There's been practice analysis of what those people do, and so there's not any different levels within that standard right there.
I think a lot of the advocacy organizations aren't so much looking for a change in the reimbursement model per se, but looking to raise the minimum threshold for what constitutes a paramedic.
And I certainly understand it, but I've yet to see anybody say that an associate's degree paramedic is going to get more medical education, or they're going to get more clinical education, or they're going to spend more time in the field. And so just making it a blanket statement that they need to have an associate's degree doesn't raise the level of education.
Well, would there be some benefit to having, say, a additional English composition class to help paramedics write a more cohesive narrative, or maybe a math course so that they can shore up their medication dosaging?
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, I think that you have to really look at this joint position paper where it says that the fire service supports higher education. I mean, there's no doubt that any education that you get, but you do see in a lot of cases, people that are going to paramedic schools, in some cases, already have a bachelor's degree or already have a master's degree, and so you're going to make those people get an associate's degree just so that they can have a paramedic certificate. It doesn't raise the level of what is the medical education going to be.
I think the Texas licensed paramedic level, which does require an associate's degree, sort of solves that argument by having people who are already credentialed as a bachelor's degree in any other profession being able to get their licensed paramedic as a result of their higher bachelor's degree education. Would that be one avenue that might be comparable?
I don't see any national forum for dictating how paramedic education is going to go, because there's still 50 states that can do things the way they want. I mean, the education, the standards that came out over 10 years ago still haven't been adopted. Even the 4 levels of EMS practitioners haven't been adopted by every state just yet, and that was 10 years ago. And so, I think there's always going to be differences in the states and how the states figure out the way they're going to do that. I would just say that, that what are the concerns? I guess one of the biggest concerns for the fire service is that this appears to be, or could be, potentially be a veiled attempt to take basically the fire service out of the education business. There's currently about 19 paramedic programs that are housed within fire departments that are accredited programs. They meet the accreditation standard. If this were implemented, if this were mandated, if this was changed on a national level to say, well, everybody has to have an associate's degree that comes out in order to sit for a national registry test, then would that take those fire departments? And then would it also then take all the hospital-based programs? Would it take all the county and city and county agencies? Would it take all the private ambulance services? There's over 130 programs that could be impacted by this, which is almost 20% of the current programs that are out there. So we already have kind of a paramedic shortage. Not kind of, we do have a paramedic shortage right now. If you go to a lot of places around the country, the limitation is the fact that a lot of the paramedic programs can't get enough students in to be able to get them out to get jobs for them. And so a lot of places that you see, the people that are getting trained are immediately getting jobs or getting hired because the local area needs more paramedics. And so now you're going to take maybe that fire department, or you're going to take that county-based program that teaches paramedics, and you're going to close them down. So now the closest paramedic program is 100 or 200 or 500 miles away. And so I just don't see that as making the profession better.
Now, what's to prevent these programs from partnering with educational institutions to offer a satellite location to teach their program?
They already do that right now. There is a pathway currently that every student that graduates from these programs is able to get college credit. But I think if you go back right now, you look at all the colleges and universities that offer an associate's degree program, they also offer either a certificate or a diploma along with it. And the majority of their students take that option rather than taking the associate's degree. And so why is that?
So,
there's
already a way for these students to gain college credit for completing a paramedic program. So
absolutely,
have the shuttered paramedic programs if they're already a part of that system.
If you said that they had to get a degree, because these other programs don't mandate that they have to have a degree. They just have a pathway. So I have a fire department-based program. My students graduate from there. If they go to the local college or they go to another college that we have an articulation agreement with or a memorandum of understanding with, they can take that certificate from my fire-based program, take it to a college and say, okay, I want to get a bachelor's degree, I want to get an associate's degree, I want to get a bachelor's degree, and then they'll give them X amount of credits for that. That option is currently there right now. Why does it have to be mandated that they have to have an associate's degree? Again, that's the confusing part about this is with the protection's already there for the student right now. You're just going to make it actually more difficult on the student. You're certainly going to make it more difficult on the employers by making them have to wait longer to get their employees, the people that are sending people to school. And again, they're not going to pay them any different. They're going to pay them the same as if they came out of the certificate program than what they came out of. You can't mandate and say, well, just because everybody has a degree, they have to get paid more. It doesn't work that way.
Well, couldn't one argue that if there's now a shortage of paramedics because of the requirement for a bachelor's degree program, now there's increased demand and less supply, therefore each individual pay would be therefore comparably more?
Well, the people that are saying that are the ones that aren't hiring people out there, are trying to find people to hire. Those are either the educators or those are people that are not involved with running systems that will tell you the difficulties that it is. And again, just because you have a shortage and you need to have, it doesn't mean that you can pay them more. You only get so much reimbursement for your service. And so, especially in the rural areas, I think that this is one of those areas that is going to be of concern, is the fact that you're going to then take this away from the rural areas because they don't feel like that they need to have an associate's degree for paramedics out there.
Now, you mentioned that a lot of this included people who don't have any say in running an organization. Now, the National Association of EMS Management was also a signatory on that other position paper encouraging the degree requirement. Why would they sign on if that's not something that they feel would be beneficial from a management standpoint?
You have to ask them that. I really don't have anything to say about that group with regards to their expertise in running EMS systems. Obviously, I think that their perspective is different than what the fire service is. The other thing is, and the fire haters out there hate this, but the fire service is the largest provider of EMS service in the country. Almost, I would say virtually every fire department, but I can't say that definitively, but are involved in some way in doing EMS. And so whether it's transport or whether it's just first responder or whatever, the fire service is the biggest provider of EMS in the country. And so the fire service needs to have some voice in the future and needs to have some idea of helping to shape that future based on looking at the whole picture and not just doing a knee-jerk reaction. Again, that's not based on any evidence. There's absolutely no evidence that's research-based that says paramedic A versus paramedic B, there's a difference. I know no research that shows that. You can speculate that, and people can say, oh, well, definitely the degree person is going to be, the education's the same. And so how is it that there's a difference when there's absolutely no way to even prove that even if someone tried to do it, I don't know how they would prove it.
What about a compromise of sorts? So what if you make it so that to go at So it was at this moment that I realized I done goofed. Apparently what happened is the audio got lost, and the rest of that the call got dropped. So unfortunately we didn't have a real full conclusion to it, but we get the idea of the positions statement from the fire side. So as a counterpoint, we do have Leger Barnes. As a counterpoint, I have Leger Barnes, who represents the National Association of EMS Educators, one of the co-authors of the EMS position paper on degrees, here with us to talk about their position paper and why they think that degrees are the way forward. Leger, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
No problem. So tell us more about this.
Okay, so for me, one of the most compelling arguments, and I think this is also for most of the EMS providers that are supporting education, one of the most compelling arguments is improved patient outcomes. The primary reason most of us got into EMS is to provide patient care, and although the fire position paper clearly states there is no evidence of better patient outcomes, there's significant evidence in the nursing literature of improved patient outcomes, including decreased mortality and morbidity. So you can see that with Bleeding Good, Park, Bonnet Spetz, 2013, Ketneely, Sloan, and Aiken, 2013. So that's just a couple of the evidence-based articles. Now, certainly EMS does not yet have its own evidence per se, but right now the best we can do is extrapolate from nursing and other allied healthcare professions, which brings us to the next point. EMS has arrived at a juncture, and professionalization, which includes the ability to self-regulate and develop evidence-based guidelines, require formal education standards. So we see this from Boylston and Collins, 2012. So EMS has the opportunity here to align itself with other healthcare professions. Without educating our workforce, we're kind of at a standstill. So are we going to be technicians, or are we going to actually just be professionals who provide healthcare? I think there seems to be some confusion here where oftentimes you'll see an argument that, and again, the fire position paper alludes to this, there's no evidence that it enhances professionalism. professionalism on an individual basis is something that we come to the job with or we don't, something that the culture of the job promotes or doesn't. But professionalization, which is what I think we're looking at here for EMS, is really the next step in an entire profession and is a trend, not an individual identity. So a lot of times people will say, well, I know a degree paramedic and he's much worse than my certificate paramedic. Well, that may be the case, but as a whole, if we look at the trends, we've seen this again in nursing and other healthcare professions, what we generally see is improvement, and we see, again, that the occupation, which I'll call EMS right now, not a career, the occupation becomes a profession. We become clinicians instead of technicians. We improve our critical thinking and our problem-based, our problem solving. And again, this is also seen in the literature if we look at other healthcare professions. Another issue, which I think is a huge issue, is recruitment and retention. And again, the FIRES paper discusses this. They're concerned about recruitment and retention. And as pointed out in the paper, we already have a strange system, and IOM 2007 brings this up. Education can actually assist in relieving this burden by creating advanced opportunities and increasing compensation. If you look at Remote 2014, EMS loses many of its best and brightest to other healthcare professions when they become frustrated with the lack of career ladder and move to pursue increased compensation and advancement. We can see that with some of, and there's actually evidence within the EMS literature here. So if you look at Blau, Chapman, Gibson, Bentley, 2011, Blau and Chapman in 2016, and our own Dr. Patterson, 2005, these are reasons that people in EMS choose to leave EMS. You know, they will go ahead and bridge across to nursing oftentimes. Most people will tell me, well, the reason I'm going is for increased compensation. They're actually, this is the one of the most interesting arguments that I see, is when people say that there's no evidence that pay will increase. Well, I'm not here to say that tomorrow everybody's pay would increase tomorrow, but there's actually a causal effect between education and increased earnings, which is well established across time, culture, and occupation. Again, Lamo 2014. There's also, if you review the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics 2018, confirms the presumption that nursing and allied health occupations who require a degree are compensated at a higher rate than those that do not. So I'm not sure when they say, particularly when educated people say that there's no evidence, I have to ask, have you even bothered to look? If we look at programs like OT and PT, both require associate degree for their assistants, and their compensation outpaces that of paramedics, as that of radiology and RTs. So I think the decision to ignore the issues associated with compensation and work hours is a decision to continue the decline of the percentage of the population interested in becoming and staying involved in EMS as an occupation. We see over and over again, I've visited numerous EMS programs across the nation, and we're always out there trying to pull people into our programs. We don't see that in nursing. We don't see that in other healthcare professionals, which are actually expanding requirements to baccalaureate prepared and beyond to meet the increasingly complex environment they're working in. And yet EMS still has not established formal education requirement at all. You know, but other programs, if we're going to say increasing education will reduce the number of applicants, I would argue that we haven't seen that in any other healthcare occupation. What we've seen is actually the opposite, because now people are actually earning a living wage. They're not working 2 and 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet. I mean, for me, this is a very personal, I guess I would say. And I guess I'll call it an agenda because I worked in EMS. I worked in poverty 96 hours a week for straight pay of 125 hours a 24-hour shift. I lived in poverty working 96 hours a week, which is ludicrous. So not only do we need to support our providers, while we also will benefit patients with this, we'll also be supporting the boots on the ground guys. Interesting to me, the retention issue. We'll continually need to hire and train new employees, further adding to the cost of operations, which may cost upwards of $100,000 per employee that leaves. And that's Kirkwood 2018. Again, that's within EMS. We have an opportunity here to make a difference and lead with some vision. I would also say, and I think most people would agree, I've heard many people say, well, we just keep increasing the requirements. Most programs have increased hours and content. Those have continued to increase, and that's from NHTSA 2000, with most programs coming closer, exceeding contact hours required in an associate degree nursing program. And yet, we are unfairly withholding credit from our graduates. If they receive a degree, they've got several long-term advantages over those who receive a certificate. The graduate will have a degree which will provide them with more opportunities, with higher compensation. If they get injured on the job, if they burn out, a degree provides more opportunities, where the expiration of the state licensure and national certification results in a complete loss for the provider. They have nothing. Everybody knows if you have a paramedic certificate and you stop working, within 2 years, you might as well throw that in the trash. It's not going to get you any benefit. But if you have a degree, that degree stays with you forever. And again, since we're already requiring them to do the work, most paramedic programs are roughly, 12 or 1,300 hours, some of them approaching 2,000. Why would we not provide a degree for our colleagues?
Well, how do you respond to criticism that, just adding some general studies hours won't necessarily benefit, the provider or make them a stronger provider?
Again, now we're talking about the individual, and there's going to be differences in individuals. But again, if we know, for example, people who take anatomy and physiology, a lot of paramedic programs have paramedics. I know oftentimes they're only required to have a GED and maybe a 40-hour course on education, and then they're expected to teach the anatomy and physiology aspect of paramedic education. I think there's going to be a huge difference between those who take a college credited course of anatomy and physiology from experts in that field, and their understanding of how the body systems work together, their ability to integrate pathophysiology, pharmacology, and those in their treatment plans. We're talking about critical thinking and being clinicians here versus our old school cookie cutter, follow an algorithm type of paramedics. I mean, I think we've moved beyond that. So certainly English, is that going to help? Comp 1 and Comp 2, is that going to help people with their documentation? Is that potentially going to keep agencies from having to go to court? Absolutely. I mean, I've been an expert witness a few times. I've also been called on my documentation on cases, and my documentation is what kept us out of court. So that will also save agencies a significant amount of money. What about math? And one of the biggest medical errors is medication dosaging, correct? Well, what happens if we improve their ability to calculate dosages? Now potentially we decrease medical errors for our patients, again, improving patient outcomes.
It looks like this has been well researched through by the various organizations that support it. Well, Jay, thank you so much for joining us. And
Can I say one thing?
Sure, one thing before we go.
Okay, so thank you. So I think right now we have several national EMS documents and philosophies being reviewed and updated that will guide EMS development into the next decade. I think this offers us a rare opportunity to inspire transformational and visionary change within EMS and to take a step towards confronting some of the market failures that we've experienced. So I think to lose this opportunity would actually, be a very sad day for EMS. And thank you so much for allowing me to be on the program today.
No problem. Well, there you've heard it, folks. Two separate contradictory points. Which one do you think is the way forward in the future for EMS? Comment down below and let us know what you think. And that's it for this week. Until next time.